I'm in the garage at our school and I'm cleaning up a bit of a mess that I've left behind after doing some work on the truck. And the reason I was doing work on the truck is I screwed up. Anyway, we'll talk about that later on. Let's get this cleaned up and then we'll do some other jobs around the school. Have a new addition to our toolkit. Julie bought me this really great electric saw. It's an MSA 220C and I absolutely love it. I wasn't convinced that electric saws would be any good, but this is. Very quiet, no noise except when you're cutting. Massive battery. Bought 2 batteries so that we can keep cutting away. But now's the time I need to do a bit of sharpening. And I cheated and bought one of these double files that does the depth gauge as well as the actual cutter tooth as well. Differently to the petrol saws, you do need to take your battery out when you're sharpening because you have to take the handbrake off to move the chain. And the thing is that with the battery in, there's still a possibility you could activate the motor and do yourself a serious mischief. I did have my petrol chainsaw with me and I was going to use that out on our trip to the woodlines. Problem was that I've actually worn the chain away with a lot of use. And I went to replace it with a spare chain that I'd had and unfortunately it didn't fit. So the electric chainsaw, which I was trying to keep for special occasions, has been used in anger for quite a few days at the school. And to be honest, I am super impressed with this thing. Cost a fair bit a day. Batteries themselves are about $350 each. And when you buy the chainsaw, you get the chainsaw, then you have to buy the battery, then you have to buy the charger for it. So it's not a simple purchase where you buy a chainsaw and just add some fuel and go. One disadvantage with an electric chainsaw is that you don't run out of fuel. And usually I use the running out of fuel as an indication it's time to top up the cutter bar oil. You don't actually get that with an electric chainsaw. You need to be very mindful about keeping your cutter bar oil topped up. So, what did I do that was a screw up? I noticed that the truck was overheating on the way into Ardith, because we always planned to come to here first to pick up the quad bikes. And we topped up with water and a lot of it, and I thought that was really right. Anyway, we got to Meriden and had to top up again. I thought something's not right. And then I realised the radiator cap was a bit loose, and what was happening is that as we were driving, the water would heat up. The water was escaping from the radiator cap and actually forming a siphon effect and draining the radiator. Anyway, cutting a really long story short, we did some dodgy work on the radiator cap, which resulted in the radiator over pressurising, and it blew the top tank seal. And we're at Yellowdine, so it's about 40 k's from Southern Cross, and Paul drove back in to get some bits and pieces. Found a new radiator cap, and he got some solder from the local mechanic, who was very kind to actually help out there, but unfortunately he got aluminium solder, and I made a mistake of thinking the top tank was aluminium because it was silver. Anyway, we couldn't fix it in the bush and made the decision to come back to Ardith. And while I was here, I pulled the radiator out and I could not get this to solder. Didn't matter what I did, it wouldn't make a good joint. Anyway, when Paul and Steve came back last week, I was showing them what I'd done, and I happened to notice that there was a bit of black removed from the top part of the tank, and instead of being silver, or the colour of aluminium, it was actually brass coloured. Then I realised that I'd been trying to solder aluminium onto brass, and that doesn't work. So in the process of doing it, I'd actually created a bit of damage, but once I'd worked out it was brass, quick trip it and mirrored and been cool, another 60k, it's quick. I got some solder and came back out and eventually soldered the radiator tank up, and it appears to be holding the water. But that's blown away our Woodlines trip, and we've decided to do a bit more work at Ardith.
In a previous video I mentioned that we had some stumps here that I was going to eventually burn out. Well, winter took a long time to come, but we've had the opportunity to burn the stumps out. They're not all completely gone, but they're all below the surface now, so I've taken those 4 out. This big old tree stump that was here was about 6 or 7 feet high. That's completely gone now, except for a few remnants of roots here. And another tree stump that we had over here I've also cut out. And I'll tell you what, the wood here was really hard, and surprisingly this stump had no white ants in it, which was amazing. And we had a number of big logs that were here that were full of white ants. Some of them were actually still quite solid, but we decided to burn them out, and it's taken nearly 5 days for them to get to this point here. So the only long log remaining is one of 4 I think there were here, so 3 of them are completely gone. This one is almost burnt through halfway, and this stump that was here, it's full of white ants, and to prove, you can see how much sand is in the middle of it, and that's just white ants. One of the other stumps that we had, we've used at the front of the driveway, and we're going to turn this into a entry sign. And it is quite impressive. So we put some oil on it to try and prevent the white ants from getting back into that one too. and put the cover back on because it's in the...
I know, I saw that when I...
There's a little orchid thing.
Oh, no.
Venus flytrap.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
I haven't even got my glasses on.
there's a couple of them there.
That is a bit cool. Lots of flies around for them.
Yeah, back in a sec.
Yep. Where's the trailer?
Hey?
Where's the trailer?
Oh, did the fucker fall off again? I lost the bolt. It's just there.
Ah,
I'm just going to replace these taps. This one's a bit of a pain in the bum to use. It doesn't seal properly. And the way this is set up, the normal taps that I bought last time, the water comes here and it splashes everywhere, so I bought a slightly different tap with some additional fittings. To make it work a little bit better. What is it? This is Coda. I think she's the town dog. Actually belongs to the pub, but pretty freely wandering everywhere around. Beautiful animal. Well, this is pretty much all that remains of that big stump that was there, and as I showed before, a massive amount of white ant stuff in the middle, so that was not good. And the last one of these is just about cooked, almost through. This has been burning for about 3 days so far, and the one over there is completely done. I'm going to give the grass a bit of a mow here, grass, whatever you want to call it, but I've marked out these little areas here, and I don't know whether the kids grew something when they were at school here, but these are some sort of bulb that's popped up and there's little patches of them, so I'm going to mark them out and avoid running over them. Really not sure what was meant to be here, but it's definitely a lot of trash at the moment. Got various poles and things that were concreted into the ground at some time, and these look like some sort of conveyor belt, mechanical conveyor belt for moving ore, I would suggest. Don't know. This is definitely stock feed stuff. I have no use for this whatsoever. And another bit of garden art here. There's an old motor, a pull start. Oh, it's a Briggs & Stratton motor. And if I was really clever, I'd do here's a motor that hasn't started for 50 years. Let's get that going. But I'm not going to. It's not a gate.
No, but it says you're not welcome.
Yes, it's fuck off. Just spent nearly 2 weeks at the block. Our woodline strip was a bit screwed up because of something I did. But it's been good. If this is what retirement feels like, I can't wait. Just got to do some checks here to do some soil sampling. So I found that using a battery drill, which isn't all that powerful, some of the holes I was able to get down nearly 600 mils and others 300 mils before I hit harder gravel like soil. With a battery drill that it wasn't too bad. Need a bigger machine though. What you been doing?
Vacuuming.
Floor looks pretty good.
Clean. Hopefully it's not too cold out there.
It's cold.
It's cold. It's okay, I can do it.
Here's another bit of free garden art. This old Briggs & Stratton motor that's on this stand is going to go out and grace the front of our yard. Garden art installed. Even though it's winter and this grass has only just grown with the recent rains, it's a good time to start cutting it down. We don't come here often enough to be able to keep it under control all the time, so every opportunity we need to manage the risk of fire. So around the pump house there is a little concrete block just here. Not sure what that is, looks like it's been formed in place, possibly one point painted red. But while I was preparing to mow over here, I found another concrete block, a little bit larger, and on this it's got some sort of mounting frame with bolts that have been cut off. There's a hole in the middle there for something, a copper pipe, possibly for water, another mounting bolt. Doesn't seem to be one on the other side, and two brackets that have been welded and mounted into there, or cut after they've been mounted in there. Got no idea what this concrete block is, and I was just about to mow it. You're old if you know what these are, and you're even older if you've used one. Found these in a rubbish pile, dumped in the bush. One man's rubbish is another man's treasure. We've spent nearly 2 weeks at the block, done a lot of cleaning up. One last job I'm going to do is to correct something that always happens under power lines. And that's the trees. They're starting to grow up. They're going to interfere with our power line that comes in and the two power lines that go across the road. And I don't need that aggravation. So I'm going to work out which of these branches I can take down and which ones I can leave. These trees have been cut down previously, and the growth is from the stumps. Over the time that we've had the block, they've actually grown quite high. If I leave them any longer, they'll grow through the power lines and it will become extremely difficult to remove them. And out comes the mower to finish off the work. This is an example of one of the reasons why I don't particularly like covering up old fires, because the ash and the dirt underneath can be extremely hot. This water is being boiled off as it hits the hot coals and sand below.